Ambassador Yoon Gi-won sat in her chair and watched the Confederacy Council celebrate. They had just voted to take 3 more human colony worlds. They called it ecological preservation. She called it theft. For 300 years, humanity had signed every treaty the galaxy asked them to sign. They had smiled. They had nodded. They had followed every rule while watching other species break the same rules without punishment. And now, sitting in this grand hall, surrounded by aliens who thought humans were too weak to matter, Juan felt something inside her finally break. She remembered her grandmother's stories. Stories of Earth before first contact. Stories of a species that had clawed its way up from nothing. Survived ice ages and plagues and wars and reached the stars through pure stubbornness. That species had joined the Galactic Confederacy, hoping for friendship. What they got was a cage made of paper and promises. High Counselor Belvax, insectoid creature with 6 arms and no heart, clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The human ambassador may now thank the Council for its wisdom in protecting these worlds from human expansion. Juan stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. They expected her to bow. They expected her to accept this humiliation like humans always did. Instead, she smiled. "I will deliver your message to Earth," she said, "and Earth will deliver its response." She walked out of the chamber without looking back. 12 hours later, Captain Beak Somi stood before the United Earth Parliament with evidence that changed everything. She was young, only 32, but her eyes held the weight of what she had discovered. For months, she had intercepted Confederacy communications. What she found was not just unfair treatment, it was a conspiracy. They had been planning this for 2 centuries, Somi told the Parliament. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she presented the data. The Confederacy identified humanity as a threat before we even joined. Our adaptability, our birth rates, our ability to survive anywhere. They feared us, so they contained us. The Parliament chamber was silent. 3,000 representatives from Earth and its colonies listened as Somi explained how every treaty had been designed to limit human growth, how other species were allowed to expand while humans were boxed in, how the ecological preservation seizures were part of a long-term plan to eventually reduce humanity to a single system. President Kim Hyuna sat at the center of the chamber, her face unreadable. She was 60 years old, a former soldier who had spent her career believing in diplomacy. Now she was learning that diplomacy had been a lie from the beginning. "What do you recommend, Captain?" she asked. Suma hesitated. Then she spoke the words that would change galactic history. "We end the treaties. All of them. Tonight." The vote took less than an hour. For the first time in 312 years, the United Earth Parliament voted unanimously on anything. Every hand raised. Every voice said yes. Every human from Earth to the farthest colony agreed on one simple truth. Enough was enough. Admiral Park Doyon received the order at his command station aboard the battleship Resolve. He was an old man, 68 years of experience carved into his face. He had spent his whole life following Confederacy rules, building only what he was allowed to build, going only where he was allowed to go. But he had also spent his whole life preparing for this moment. "Send the message," he ordered. "All channels. All frequencies. Every human ship in the galaxy sends it at the same time. At exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time, 200 star systems heard the same words. All treaties between the United Earth Government and the Galactic Confederacy are hereby nullified. Effective immediately." The message was short. It was simple. It was the most terrifying thing the galaxy had ever heard in the Confederacy Council chamber. High Counselor Belvax was pulled from his sleep cycle by panicked aides. He read the message 3 times, his compound eyes struggling to process what he was seeing. "This is a tantrum," he declared. "Humans do not have the courage for real action. They will apologize within a day." Trade Minister Orvani, a tall being with silver skin and worried eyes, was not so confident. "High Counselor, if this is real, we have a problem. The non-aggression pact was part of the treaty bundle. If they have nullified everything..." Belvax finally understood. His 6 arms went still. They had declared war, or Vaney finished. But that was not quite right, and deep down both of them knew it. Humanity had not declared war. They had simply stopped pretending to be at peace with people who had never treated them as equals. They had stopped playing a game that was rigged against them from the start. On Earth, people gathered in the streets, not to celebrate, not to mourn. They gathered because they wanted to stand together for whatever came next. Families held each other. Old soldiers straightened their backs. Children asked their parents what was happening, and their parents told them the truth. "We are done being small," they said. "We are done being afraid." Ambassador Yoon Gi-won stood at her window and watched the lights of the city below. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that the quiet species they had ignored for centuries had been watching, learning, and waiting. She thought about High Counselor Belvax and his certainty that humans would apologize. She almost felt sorry for him. He had spent his whole life believing that power came from size and strength and loud voices. He had never understood that true power came from patience. Humans had been patient for 300 years. Now their patience was over. The stars seemed brighter that night. Or maybe it was just that humanity was finally looking at them without chains around their necks. Either way, Gi-won knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had survived everything their own world had thrown at them. Ice ages, asteroids, plagues, wars. Humans had faced extinction over and over again, and every single time they had refused to die. The Confederacy thought they were dealing with a weak species that had been tamed by treaties. They were about to learn the truth. Humans were never tamed. They were just waiting for the right moment to show their teeth, and that moment had finally arrived. The first thing the galaxy noticed was the silence. Human freighters that had been carrying food across 100 systems went dark. Human stations that powered trade routes shut down without warning. Human workers on alien worlds simply stopped working, packed their bags, and waited for transport home. Trade Minister Orvani had run the numbers 3 times. Each time the results got worse. 34% of Confederacy food production, he told the Emergency Council session. 61% of medical supplies. 78% of faster-than-light engine manufacturing. All human-controlled. All now stopped. High Counselor Belvax waved a dismissive arm. "Then, we will find other sources. Humans are not special. With respect, High Counselor, that is exactly the problem." Orvani's silver skin had gone pale with worry. "We spent 3 centuries making sure humans could not expand. We never considered what would happen if they simply withdrew. We do not have other sources. We made them essential, and then forgot they were essential." Belvax clicked his mandibles in anger. "Send a patrol fleet to their border. Remind them of their place." The patrol fleet consisted of 50 ships, the pride of the Confederacy Navy. They had crushed rebellions before. They had enforced Confederacy will across the galaxy. They expected to find a few outdated human vessels guarding the border. Relics from the days when humans were allowed to have a military. What they found instead was Kada Admiral Park Do-yoon and 400 warships. The human fleet hung in space like a wall of steel and fire. Ships that should not exist, according to treaty records. Ships with weapons that had been forbidden. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards, hidden in asteroid fields and empty systems. Waiting for this day, the patrol fleet commander, a reptilian officer named Korvax, opened a communication channel with shaking hands. "Human vessels. You are in violation of 17 treaties regarding military. Those treaties no longer exist." Admiral Park interrupted calmly. "You may turn around and leave, or you may stay and learn what 300 years of preparation looks like. The choice is yours." Korvax looked at the fleet in front of him. His sensors were detecting weapon systems his people did not even recognize. His tactical officer was crying. "We are leaving," Korvax said. As the patrol fleet retreated, Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had spent centuries being told what they could not build. No one had ever asked what they were building anyway. On Earth, General Han Tai-woo stood before President Kim and explained the military situation. "We have been ready for 80 years, he said. Taiwu was a thin man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Every administration since President Yu has contributed to the Hidden Fleet. We have shipyards in 12 systems that the Confederacy does not know exist. We have weapons technology that we've developed in secret. We have soldiers who have been training for a war that everyone hoped would never come." President Kim nodded slowly. "And what do you recommend?" "I recommend we do nothing." The president raised an eyebrow. "Nothing?" "The Confederacy expects us to attack. They have spent centuries preparing for human aggression. What they have not prepared for is human absence." Taiwu pulled up a holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots represented critical systems that depended on human labor and expertise. There were hundreds of them. "Every day we do nothing, their economy bleeds. Every day we stay quiet, they grow more afraid. We do not need to fire a single shot to win this war. We just need to wait." Far from Earth, in the capital of the Valori Empire, a different conversation was taking place. The Valori had been rivals of the Confederacy for 1,000 years. They had watched humanity join the Confederacy and disappear into its systems, becoming workers and traders and peaceful citizens. Now they watched humanity rise, and they saw opportunity. The Valori Emperor sent a single message to Earth: "We are listening." President Kim received the message and smiled. The Confederacy had spent so long trying to keep humanity contained that they had forgotten the oldest rule of power. If you make too many enemies, eventually some of them will become friends with each other. On a Confederacy world called Viller Prime, a young human engineer named No Ga made a decision. She had worked on the planet's power grid for 15 years. She had been treated as a second-class citizen the entire time. Lower pay, worse housing, no advancement. All because she was human. When the treaty nullification was announced, her supervisor had laughed. "You humans will come crawling back," he had said. "You need us." Ga had smiled politely and said nothing. The next day she submitted her resignation along with every other human worker on the planet. 47,000 humans, all leaving at once. The power grid failed 3 days later. Ga watched from the transport ship as Velar Prime went dark. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness. She had tried to be a good worker. She had tried to fit in. But the Confederacy had never wanted humans to fit in. They had wanted humans to know their place. Now humanity was showing them a different place. Not below, not beside, apart. High Counselor Belvax called an emergency session every day that week. Each day brought worse news. Food shortages on 12 worlds. Medical emergencies on 30 more. Trade routes collapsing because the human navigators who knew the safe paths had gone home. "We must force them to return," Belvax shouted. "How?" Arvani asked quietly. "With what leverage? We have nothing they need. We have only things they want to stop giving us." The truth was finally becoming clear, even to Belvax. For 300 years, the Confederacy had treated humanity as a resource to be managed. They had never noticed that the resource had become the foundation of everything. And now the foundation was walking away, on the Confederacy border. Admiral Park watched his sensors and waited. Behind him, 400 ships stood ready for a war that might never need to be fought. In front of him, the galaxy was slowly realizing that the quiet species they had dismissed for so long had become the most dangerous force in existence. Not because humans were violent, because humans were patient. And because when humans finally decided to act, they had already been planning for generations. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had confused silence for weakness. They had confused obedience for submission. They had confused patience for cowardice. Now they were learning the truth, and the lesson was just beginning. Scholar Phoenix had spent his entire life studying dead civilizations. Now, sitting in the great archive of the Confederacy, he was beginning to wonder if he was watching a living one die. The insectoid scholar pulled another data crystal from the ancient records. He had been researching humanity for 3 days straight, trying to understand how a species everyone had dismissed had become so dangerous. What he found made his blood run cold. Before joining the Confederacy, Humans had fought 17 interstellar wars against various species who had tried to conquer or contain them. They'd won all 17. Phoenix read the accounts with growing horror. The Corvani had invaded human space, expecting easy conquest. Humanity had fought them for 30 years, and then conquered Corvani Prime. The Seleth had tried to enslave human colonies. Humanity had destroyed their entire fleet in a single battle, and then helped the Seleth rebuild as a free people. The pattern was always the same. Someone attacked humanity. Humanity suffered. Humanity adapted. Humanity won. And then, strangely, humanity showed mercy. The Confederacy had looked at this history and seen a threat. They had invited humanity to join them, wrapped them in treaties, and slowly squeezed them into submission. They thought they were being clever. Phoenix closed the data crystal and stared at nothing. They had not been clever. They had been fools. They had taken a species that won every war it fought and made them angry. On the colony world of New Busan, Lieutenant Choi Min-ho flew his fighter through the upper atmosphere and watched the Confederacy garrison surrender. Not a single shot had been fired. The enemy soldiers had seen the human fleet and simply put down their weapons. Min-ho was only 24. His grandmother had told him stories about the old days when humans had begged for scraps at the Confederacy table, when humans had accepted every insult because they thought peace was worth any price. He had grown up, believing those days would last forever. Now he was watching them end. "Lieutenant, what do we do with the prisoners?" his wingman asked. Min-ho thought about it. These soldiers had occupied his people's world. It enforced unfair laws and looked down on human colonists for years. Part of him wanted revenge, but he remembered what his grandmother had also told him. We are better than they think we are. Never give them a reason to believe otherwise. Treat them well, Min-ho ordered. Feed them. Give them medical care. And then send them home. The wingman sounded confused. Just send them home? Just send them home. Let them tell their people how humans treat prisoners. Let them see who we really are. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human forces reclaimed the stolen colonies without bloodshed. They did not loot or destroy. They simply took back what was theirs and then stopped. The Confederacy had expected human rage. They had prepared for human violence. They had not prepared for human discipline in the council chamber. Ambassador Yoon stood before the assembled representatives one final time. She had not wanted to come, but President Kim had insisted. The galaxy needed to hear the truth from a human voice. You wonder why we were prepared, Yoon said. Her voice was calm, almost sad. You wonder how we built a fleet when treaties forbade it. You wonder what we want. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces. Some showed anger. Some showed fear. A few showed something that might have been shame. 312 years ago, humanity joined this confederacy, hoping for partnership. We signed your treaties in good faith, followed your rules while watching others break them. We accepted insult after insult because we believed that peace was worth the price. Yoon paused. The silence in the chamber was absolute. You made us sign treaties limiting our weapons. You made us sign treaties limiting our colonies. You made us sign treaties limiting our ships and our technology and our growth. But you never made us sign anything limiting our patience, our memory, our planning. We smiled, and there was no warmth in it. We signed your papers. We followed your rules. And every single day, we prepared for the moment when you would break your word one too many times. That moment came. And now you discovered that the species you dismissed for 3 centuries was watching everything, learning everything, waiting for everything. High Counselor Belvac stood up, his 6 arms trembling with rage. You threaten us? You dare to? I do not threaten, Yoon interrupted quietly. I explain. You asked why we were ready. Now you know. We're always ready. We were simply polite enough not to show it. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. One more thing. 3 species have already contacted Earth, seeking separate peace agreements. By tomorrow, it will be 7. Your confederacy is not as united as you believe. Perhaps it never was. She walked out, leaving chaos behind her. President Kim addressed the human worlds that night. She did not speak of victory or revenge. She spoke of dignity. For too long, we were told to be small, to be quiet, to be grateful for whatever scraps the galaxy threw to us. Our parents accepted this because they believed in peace. Our grandparents accepted this because they hoped things would change. They did not change. They got worse. She looked into the camera, and billions of humans looked back. We do not want war, do not want conquest. We do not want revenge. We want only what every species deserves, the right to exist as equals, the right to grow, the right to be judged by our actions, not our species. The Confederacy denied us these rights for 300 years. Her voice hardened. They will not deny us again. On his ship at the border, Admiral Park received reports from across the galaxy. Human civilians were being evacuated from Confederacy worlds. Human merchants were pulling their goods. Human engineers were leaving their posts. The galaxy was not collapsing into war. It was collapsing into absence. Humanity was not destroying the Confederacy. They were simply leaving it and taking everything they had built with them. It was, Park thought, the most elegant revenge in history. No deaths, no destruction. Just withdrawal? The Confederacy had spent centuries making humanity essential. Now they would learn exactly how essential humanity had become. And unlike a war, there was nothing they could do to stop it. They could not fight an enemy that simply refused to be there. Anymore, all they could do was watch as everything they had built slowly fell apart. The Confederacy Council voted. For war on a Tuesday, the vote was close. 847 to 812, with dozens of species abstaining. High Counselor Belvax had pushed for weeks, promising that a show of force would bring humanity back to the negotiating table. He believed that humans were bluffing. He believed that their hidden fleet was smaller than reports suggested. He believed that the galaxy could survive without human labor and expertise. He was wrong about everything. Director Lee Junsu sat in his office on Earth and watched the war declaration with calm eyes. He was the head of human intelligence, a position that officially did not exist. For 40 years, he had built a network of agents across the galaxy. Not soldiers. Not spies in the traditional sense. Just humans living their lives, making friends, becoming trusted. Doctors who healed alien children. Engineers who kept stations running. Teachers who educated the next generation. Ordinary people who had become essential to the places they lived. Now he activated them. Not for sabotage. Not for violence. Just for withdrawal. Phase 2, he said quietly into his communicator. All assets begin evacuation procedures. Within hours, the Confederacy began to feel the effects. The human doctor who had run a hospital on Keller 7 for 20 years simply left. The human engineering team that maintained the Orvani shipyards packed their tools and went home. The human teachers, scientists, translators, and administrators who had become part of alien societies all said the same thing. We would love to stay. But we cannot serve a government that has declared war on our people. No one was forced to leave. No one was threatened. They simply chose to go, and when they were gone, the places they had worked began to fail. Commander Shin Yanji led her Special Forces unit on a very different kind of mission. Her soldiers were the best humanity had ever produced, trained in secret academies that the Confederacy did not know existed. They could fight. They could kill. They could do things that would make the galaxy tremble. Instead, she used them for rescue operations. Human civilians on Confederacy worlds were being threatened. Some had been arrested as enemy agents. Others faced violence from angry locals who blamed them for the economic collapse. Yunji's unit went in, extracted the endangered civilians, and broadcast everything live across the galactic network. The footage showed human soldiers breaking into prisons, not to kill, but to free. It showed them carrying children to safety. It showed them leaving alien guards unconscious, but alive when they could have left them dead. The Confederacy tried to spin the operations as acts of war, but the galaxy saw something else. They saw humans acting with honor even when they had every reason to be cruel. They saw a species that had been wronged, choosing mercy over revenge. Counselor Travax, longtime rival of Belvax, used the footage in his speeches. "Look at what we have done," he told his followers. "Look at how they respond. We declared them enemies, and they rescue our prisoners with gentleness. We threaten their people, and they respond with restraint. What does this say about us? What does this say about them? The cracks in the Confederacy grew wider. The first real battle came near the Kepler frontier. A Confederacy fleet of 80 ships, commanded by Admiral Vorkai, moved to blockade a human trade route. It was supposed to be a show of force, a reminder that the Confederacy still had military power. Admiral Park was waiting. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons technology, developed in secret over centuries, tore through Confederacy shields like paper. Human pilots, trained in simulators that the Confederacy thought were just entertainment programs, outmaneuvered the enemy at every turn. Human ships moved as a single unit, coordinated by systems so advanced that Confederacy sensors could not even detect the communications. When it was over, 37 Confederacy ships were destroyed. The rest fled. Human losses were 0. Admiral Park opened a channel to the retreating fleet. His voice was calm, almost tired. We do not want your ships. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your people or your resources or your technology. We just want you to understand something very simple. We are done asking for permission to exist. We are done accepting your rules while you ignore them. We are done being the galaxy's servants. He paused. Go home. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humanity does not seek war. But if war comes to us, we will finish it. Every time, the message spread across the galaxy faster than any fleet could travel. For the first time, species that had dismissed humanity for centuries began to truly understand. What they were facing, this was not a rebellion of angry slaves. This was not a tantrum from a weak species. This was the awakening of something that had been sleeping for 300 years. Something that had been patient and quiet and waiting, and now that it was awake, nothing in the galaxy could put it back to sleep. High Counselor Belvax received the battle report in his private chambers. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he swept his arms across his desk, sending data pads and crystals crashing to the floor. How? He screamed. How did they build this? How did they hide this? We watched them. We monitored them. We controlled every aspect of their existence. His advisor, a small creature named Kellex, spoke carefully. High Counselor, perhaps that was the problem. We watched what they did. We never considered what they were thinking. Belvax turned his compound eyes on Kellex with murderous intent. But before he could speak, another report arrived. 3 more species had withdrawn from the Confederacy. 5 others were demanding an end to the war. The economy was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted, and on a dozen worlds. Civil unrest was growing as populations blamed the Council for provoking humanity. The war had barely begun, and the Confederacy was already losing not to human weapons, not to human soldiers, to human patience. Finally, transformed into action. On Earth, President Kim watched the reports with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. This was not what she had wanted. No good leader wanted war, even a war that was necessary. But some lessons could only be taught through pain. The galaxy was learning that lesson now, and humanity was teaching it with a gentleness. That made the lesson all the more devastating. They were not monsters. They were not conquerors. They were simply people who had been pushed too far, and had finally decided to push back, and the galaxy would never be the same. Elder Osanhai was 147 years old, kept alive by medical technology that humanity had developed in secret while pretending to be primitive. She remembered the early days. She remembered when the first alien ship had landed on Earth, and humans had looked up at the stars with hope in their hearts. She remembered the treaties, all 47 of them. She had signed 23 herself during her long career as a diplomat. Each time, she had believed that cooperation was better than conflict. Each time, she had accepted terms that favored the Confederacy because she thought peace was worth any price. Now she sat in a quiet room on Earth, writing new treaties. This time, humanity would set the terms. 3 months had passed since the night when everything changed. In that time, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Valkyrie Empire had formally allied with Earth, breaking the Confederacy's political dominance. 7 other species had left the Confederacy entirely, seeking their own arrangements with humanity. Dozens more were negotiating in secret. High Counselor Belvax was gone, removed from power by his own council. His final words had been broadcast across the galaxy, though he had not intended them for public consumption. We thought we were containing them. We were just teaching them exactly how we thought. Every restriction we placed on them showed them our fears. Every treaty showed them our weaknesses. We gave them 300 years to study us, and we learned nothing about them. He was right. The Confederacy had spent centuries watching humans follow rules. They had never wondered what humans were thinking while they followed those rules. They had never imagined that obedience could be a strategy. Captain Beaksomi stood on the bridge of her new ship, the Dawn of Sol. 3 months ago, she had been an intelligence officer working in the shadows. Now she commanded one of humanity's most advanced vessels, a symbol of everything her people had built in secret. Her first officer was an alien named Kelix, the same advisor who had once served High Counselor Belvax. After the Counselor's fall, Kelix had been marked for punishment by the new leadership. Somi had personally requested his transfer to human space. "You could have let them have me," Kelix said, one evening, as they watched the stars from the observation deck. "After what my people did to yours, no one would have blamed you." Somi shook her head. "That is not who we are. You served a government that wronged us, but you also tried to warn them. You tried to prevent this? That matters." "Does it?" "I failed. The war happened anyway. The war is over. What matters now is what we build next." Somi turned to face him. "My grandmother used to say that revenge is a fire that burns the one who holds it. We did not do any of this for revenge. We did it because we had no other choice. Now that we have one, we have a different choice. We can become what the Confederacy was, ruling through fear and control. Or we can become something better." Kelix was quiet for a long moment. "You truly believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what was the point of all those years of patience?" On Earth, President Kim announced humanity's terms to the galaxy. Her speech was carried on every channel, translated into every language, heard by every species that had ever looked down on humans. "We want peace," she said. "True peace, not the false peace of chains and submission. We want trade that is fair. We want treaties that are honored by all parties, not just by us. We want to be judged by our actions, not by our species. We want the right to grow and explore and build without asking permission from those who see us as lesser beings." She paused, and billions of viewers waited. "We do not want conquest. We do not want your worlds or your resources. We do not want to rule you. We only want what every species wants: dignity, respect, the chance to exist as equals in a galaxy that has room for all of us." Her voice softened. "For 300 years, we tried to earn these things through obedience. It did not work. So we took a different path. We showed you our strength. We showed you what we could do if pushed too far. Now we ask you to see us clearly for the first time, not as servants, not as threats, just as people who want the same things you want." Eldero finished the new treaties on a quiet afternoon. They were simple documents, nothing like the complex webs of obligations that had bound humanity for centuries. Equal trade, mutual defense, shared exploration, fair treatment. She signed her name at the bottom of the first one, a treaty with the Valkyrie Empire. Her hand trembled slightly, not from age, but from emotion. She had spent her whole life accepting unfair terms because she believed in peace. Now, finally, she was signing something that did not require her people to sacrifice their dignity. The Valkyrie ambassador, a tall being with silver eyes, signed as well. When it was done, he looked at O with something that might have been respect. "My people have watched humanity for centuries," he said. "We always wondered why you accepted the Confederacy's treatment. We thought perhaps you were weak. We understand now. You were not weak. You were waiting." O smiled. "We were always waiting. We just hoped we would never need to stop." On the Dawn of Sol, Captain Somi received word that the last human civilians had been evacuated from hostile Confederacy space. The withdrawal was complete. Humanity had pulled back to its own territory in its new allied space, leaving the core Confederacy to deal with the consequences of its choices. Kellex approached her with a question that had been bothering him for weeks. What will humans do now? You have one. You have allies. You have power. What comes next? Somi looked out at the stars she had grown up watching with longing. For her whole life, those stars had been forbidden to her. Treaties had told her where she could go and where she could not. Rules had limited her dreams now. For the first time in 300 years, humanity could go anywhere. The same thing we have always done, she said. We will build. We will grow. We will explore. We will make friends with those who want friendship and leave alone those who want to be left alone. She turned to Kellex with a slight smile. And we will remember everything that was done to us, everything we endured, everything we built in the darkness while pretending to be small. We will remember all of it, not for revenge. Just so we never forget what happens when we trust too easily. Kellex nodded slowly. And if someone tries to put you in chains again? Somi did not answer immediately. She thought of her grandmother, who had lived through the worst of the treaty years. She thought of Eldero, who had signed away humanity's future, believing it was the only way to survive. She thought of Admiral Park, and General Han and President Kim, and all the others who had worked for generations to prepare for a day they hoped would never come. Then, she thought of the children, being born right now on Earth and its colonies, children who would grow up free, children who would never know what it felt like to bow before aliens who saw them as lesser beings, children who would look at the stars and see possibilities instead of barriers. If anyone tries to put us in chains again, she said quietly, they will discover what the Confederacy learned. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we never, ever stop planning for the day we need to remind the galaxy who we are. She turned back to the stars. We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. We reached the stars through pure stubbornness. We endured 300 years of humiliation without losing ourselves. And now we are free. The dawn of Sol moved forward into the endless dark, carrying humans and their new allies toward a future that was finally their own. Behind them, the old order crumbled. Ahead of them, a new galaxy was being born, and at its heart, patient and strong and ready for whatever came next. Humanity was finally taking its place among the stars, not as servants, not as threats, just as people who had learned the hardest lesson the universe could teach, that peace without dignity is just a slower kind of death, and that sometimes the only way to earn respect is to demand it. The galaxy had learned that. Lesson 2, they would not forget it anytime soon.